I hope you guys are having a wonderful weekend here. We just got some fantastic news on the release of Nyx, the brand new system that we were anticipating should be in our hands by next month, which is a great news for game development as well as everyone who predicted that this would have been the situation after CitizenCon. But that's for a whole nother video. Today we are specifically looking at the home planet for that system, which is Nyx I. It's supposed to serve somewhat of a bloom in the case of Pyro, or if you were in Stanton, you would say something of a microtech, this giant body of planet that has a variety of biomes, ecosystems, and a variety of creatures and different things to do within a single planet. So we'll go ahead and cut the chat here and we'll head directly to see what the devs are going to tell us about what's coming with this new Nyx I, as well as what we can expect with the new Genesis engine and planetary tech.
Nyx I has got a rugged, remote beauty. It's got a diverse set of biomes, from weathered rocky mountain ranges to vast sweeping forests and grasslands, and from damp, expansive wetlands to claustrophobic, festering swamps. These core biome concepts give us a fantastic platform to hone our technology, in some cases because the current tech couldn't do them at all, or because we want to completely step up our game for them. So, let's approach this planet in much the same way that you, the player, will, from orbit. The orbit appearance of the planets going forward is far more tied to what is present on the surface. Previously, we had different data that drove the orbital and ground coloring. That's because the orbit was designed to look like vegetation that we'd place on the surface, and the ground coloring was trying to be a mix of soil, rock, and the organic compound coloring that forms the kind of colors there. Now we author much more of the data in a unified way. When you look at Earth, you see blues and greens for ocean and vegetation, and brown or yellowy tones for sand and soil. We wanted to keep it as simple as that. The same set of textures and data that define the color of the soil, sand, and rock on the ground are used to create the orbital look. We then assess the presence of vegetation and competition between different species on each part of the planet and use that to blend in tones of green, including variations due to species health and the current season. This creates a far more complete image and allows you to identify features, geologies, and potential points of interest all the way from space. Let's go down to the surface and start with something closer to what you're used to, but in a whole new light. When we approached the surface of the planet, we wanted to start by focusing on just the soil and rock. One of the things that was missing from our terrain previously was simply feature complexity. Looking at our contemporaries, we lacked detail at the ground scale. To combat this, we've added a new layer of data. That layer is called the medium tiles. These are intelligently placed on top of the existing 4-kilometer terrain tiles based on slope, soil type, and other erosion data. And these medium tiles don't just create height changes, they also bring in local erosion data both for soil and bedrock size values. And this gives us a whole new level of terrain detail, of scale, and allows us to create far more unique locations across the planet. So now that we've nailed the surface, let's have a look at adding some rocks. We've now got two major contributors to the rock content of our planets. Firstly, long desired feature, cliffs. We are adding large scale, very detailed to all our cliffs based on the geology at a given location. This adds an exciting new dimension to steep slopes that we simply couldn't get before. The second is a big one for you ground vehicle enthusiasts. Rocks are now found not scattered everywhere, like spilt popcorn at the cinema, but only in places you'd expect to find them, thanks to a brand new rock scattering algorithm that isn't annoying as hell. Using physical data generated for each large and medium tile, Now rock distribution makes sense and has a physical basis. So if you're still crashing into them after this comes out, that's on you. The rock assets themselves have had a glow up too. We now create rock sets related to a particular geology that look like they originated from the same source. And this ties into how we'll be distributing minables in much more interesting ways too. So now that our base terrain and rock scattering looks good, let's add some vegetations and explore some additional biomes. Nyx I's forests and grasslands are full of trees, various grass species, rock formations, and they're found in all sorts of elevations like mountain valleys, open plains, and dense meadows. And when we start to add a bit of fresh water, they begin transitioning into more wetland-type biomes. And while forests are super cool, let's focus on the grasslands and wetlands today. So, how are we making these look so great? Obviously, we've had grass before, but never meadows of it, because until now, we haven't been able to spawn grass in large enough quantities or effectively represented at distance. So we're stepping up our game in terms of spawning, shaping, and shading grass. With Genesis, we now leverage GPU spawning to create vast quantities of assets across all biomes, whether it be dense meadows or more complex collections of ground cover like you can see in these wetlands. We are also able to fit our grass tiles to the ground by conforming them to the unique terrain underneath. Now we can finally cover complex terrain shapes with grass and ground cover assets, and as a result they are now gravity aligned, meaning each blade is oriented as you'd expect and not sticking out like before. Next, let's take a look at how we light our grass. Now, as in real life, the shading of a grass blade, or indeed a whole field of grass, is lit very differently to like a flat surface. We now use a solution that shades meadows of grass far more like fur or hair. And this, if you think about it, makes sense. At a distance, a field of grass is far more like a carpet or cloth than a flat surface. This improves how our grass looks from a near perspective, as well as bringing us nicely into how we're solving the distant representation of grass. So let's talk about the distance problem. One of our biggest achievements with Genesis is allowing us to build beautiful biomes out of flora and geology assets like a building set. Can I say Lego?
No.
Too late. But in the past, this broke down very quickly when objects simply disappeared when viewing the same biome from 10, 20, 100 kilometers away. Because we don't hide planetary transitions and allow you to view complex regions from very large distances, there are almost infinite perspectives from which you can see a location in Star Citizen. So, how can we afford to evaluate complex spawning logic at runtime for the entire swathes of the planet? Enter the virtual terrain. Virtual terrain, or VT for short, is how we now cache and represent our terrain at varying scales. This has been the enabler for all of the lovely advances in terrain complexity and asset spawning we've shown so far. And it's also how we now evaluate and represent vegetation from a distance. When creating the VT for each part of the terrain, we assess if vegetation has covered the ground, and if so, what shading should be applied. For all of our biomes, we're now able to use the same shading model for the distant representation as the close-up asset, whether that's our lovely rolling hills, some more dramatic rockscapes, those muggy wetlands, or even our festering swamps. So yeah, we didn't forget about the swamps, and they're coming to Nyx I as well. Built using the lessons learned and all the technologies we've developed, these swamps now spring into existence from the planetary data. This biome combines all of the elements from the other biomes we've shown you today, from water interaction, denser spawning, unique ground coverage. And I think it creates something really unique.